Alright, we're now up to turn 8, the start of turn 8, so there's 3 turns left for the Catholics to try and salvage a victory out of this. From what I've seen of this particular battle, there's really not any... I don't know how the Huguenots could win. They don't have enough guys. They are in a constant defensive posture, so to orders other than attack are kind of beneficial for them, where they can avoid taking step losses if they do things like retreat orders or disengagement orders or even skirmish orders, which is what I have them in right now. Because the skirmish orders allow you to change one step loss into a disorganization. But the problem with that is that without the +1 quality rating or combat rating that the attack orders give you, you cannot really hope to do much damage to an enemy that outnumbers you. As you can see, the Catholics have a number of stacks of troops here, especially here. These are some very powerful strength units, 6 strength Swiss Guard. These big stacks of guys with using a 6 combat rating plus the support plus the attack order it's very difficult to deal with if you're not attacking in turn, because you're missing out on that +1 from the attack orders. So at this point, the Huguenots are just looking for terrain, trying to negate enemy charges, trying to minimize their own losses and just run out the clock. But in terms of them actually inflicting damage, which, in this scenario, you have to inflict damage to get significant points. And, if you've just done nothing but take damage, that's going to make it hard for you to win. Now, to be fair, the victory level for this particular scenario, which we can see here, there doesn't need to be a huge point differential to get a draw. So, if the Huguenots can keep it close in terms of victory points, they can win. Or not win, but they can draw and not just end up with a total blowout loss. Currently, the Catholics are at 6 victory points. So if the Huguenots can hold them there over the next 3 turns, that ends up being a draw. So, the victory point differential kind of helps for a win here, but it's hard to feel, in this sort of fighting withdrawal that essentially is what the Huguenots are doing. It's hard to feel like you're winning, because you're basically just running, and you're going to take losses, especially at the beginning, and there's really nothing you can do to avoid those losses, and you're not going to have enough reinforcements to punch back all that hard. I was able to inflict a step loss, I think, on this stack here, which is moved out to try and get around the flank here. One of the things that has worked to the Huguenots' advantage is the number of movement points that the Catholics have to expend moving into Zoc zones. If you move into zones that are in an enemy Zoc, that's an extra movement point expense, and anytime it costs you 3 movement points or more to move into a zone, on a 3 movement point cost, you have to make a quality check for each unit that enters that zone. On a 4 movement point cost to enter a zone, there's automatic disorganization. So you can end up, if you don't plan your attacks, your movements methodically, you can end up with a lot of disorganized units, and that just totally stalls your attack and can make you very vulnerable to counterattacks, because if you don't have a full stack of guys, here there's 2 guys that are disorganized, they cannot provide support. So say 3 of these guys are disorganized and there's 1 guy left that's of any combat value, well, now you've got a big stack that can counterpunch, because he'll have support, but he won't have any because these guys are all disorganized. So that can be very dangerous. You have to be very careful on how you're moving, advancing your attacking forces, because they can end up getting counterattacked, and you could end up with a disaster on your hands. So just something to be very careful about this game, the way the zones all work. Your movement is very important, and you gotta especially remember that units that are on opposite sides of a junction point are still adjacent. It's not just that share a long border, it's that share a point border. So that's something to remember when you're moving guys up. Somebody here is adjacent to this space here. So that's taken a little bit for me to get used to, the fact that points converging, everything that converges at a point is adjacent instead of just along the flat edge. So we will run through the last few turns and see how things end up. Alright, so here we are at the end of the 10th turn. And this is the situation at the end. You can see these guys ran over here and they grabbed the replacement leader for, what was his name? Puibode. I don't think replacement leaders are worth any points. Puibode was worth 2 points, so he ended up being and he died way back here, but he ended up being the margin of victory for the Catholics, who ended up with, as you can see here, 7 victory points, which is just enough for a minor tactical victory. They really were pushing at the end and inflicted a number of step losses and DSs on the Huguenot line, which kind of retreated to this forested band here to try and limit the number of charges that they could have run against them. But the Catholics were able to bring in a number of attacks with some high-value units and inflict a number of step losses on the Huguenots, which I had switched all of them to skirmish orders just because those provided the ability to substitute or to retreat instead of taking step losses. The problem was that they were kind of in a position where they couldn't retreat, but step losses don't hurt you until you actually lose the units, and then even if you lose the units, the step losses are only half a point. So, but they still lost a number of units in that defensive column that was kind of holding the line until the main force managed to extricate the rest of them. So, your end result, about as expected, the Catholics ended up winning, although not by very much. Due to some skillful maneuver and some difficulty on the Catholics in terms of getting their units up there, and some unfortunate QC rolls that they had to make for entering a lot of these Zocs along the Huguenot line. It kind of stalled their attack and broke it up just enough that the Huguenots were able to prevent losing actual units, and were able to just absorb step losses, which was just enough to keep them from at least getting blown out. Although, like I said, the 7 victory points makes this a minor tactical victory for the Catholics. So that's the end of the Battle of Jarnac. I'm not sure if I'm going to do any more battles in the box at the moment, as I've got some other things, not Black Orchestra, although that's definitely of interest. That just arrived in the mail recently. But I've got this guy here, Hell's Highway, that I'm kind of interested in doing the full Market Garden campaign for, because I just watched the movie A Bridge Too Far, and it kind of got me in the mood for some Market Garden action. So that may be up next.